Welcome back to Wickerson Studios. I'm taking a look at the training guide for Rhino, and the 4.3 exercise practice and display gives you a pretty nice camera, which is pretty sweet. As long as you're clicked on the right window, they're going to show you how to do things like go into view and try all the viewport things like splitting viewports to 3. You can go in here and you can take your viewport and go to the layout and split vertical. You can do all this, but if you want to return it to what you want, you can go back into view and viewport layout and just set it back to 4 viewports. I do that, and sometimes I just go down here and get in the habit of looking at viewport layout right here, and I do just do a click here for 4 layouts. And the other thing to do is to use your standard and zoom extends all, which should bring everything back in. I really have a fidgety mouse now, so it's causing a little bit of trouble. I need to go grab the other one. Anyway, you should be comfortable going in, getting your help files, learning to Rhino, get your toolbar samples, pop it in here, and pull it in. And they exercise a lot like this: select editing, grabbing this, and then possibly go into view selected. So what can I do here? I can grab a little here and say, okay, I want to view. I think when I do that, if I hit here and say zoom window, I can like zoom in here and it'll zoom into that window, which is kind of nice. Hit repeat and zoom into that window, and then once again zoom extends all to bring it back. You can zoom selected and things like that. So enough said about the camera. I mean, that was kind of a big exercise. What's more important is to get you into making your own files. So in 4.4 called draw lines, and this is where I'm going to relate it to Grasshopper, they get you into having your file, making a new one. I don't want to save that other one because it's already saved. I'm just going to go into small millimeters. I will call this file something, and I think they suggest calling it something very simple. What do they say to save it as? I think it's important. Save as, and we'll pop it in this file, and we'll call it line, because that's what we're going to play with, lines. And I think I've already done it once, so we'll just replace that. And what I want you to do is slowly go into curve and play around. So the first thing is drawing line segments. They say, okay, well, if you go into curve and you select lines, because say there's a single line segment, you can just draw it from here to here, depending on where your snaps are and your orthogonal. If you reset with the right click and do it again, start at the end of that line, go over here, you'll make a second line. If you reset and do another one like this, now, you can kind of think that you made 4 lines, and that's exactly what you've got. And you can look at your properties and see that, and they're all separate. Another thing to do would be to go in here, and I'm going to show you an example of going in a curve and playing around with possibly a polyline, making a polyline that will join them all. So I'm going to take that one, that one, that one, and do exactly what I just did, but make one that was technically, if I grab my second curve that I made, I've made a polyline that actually is one unit, whereas the other one is all separate. And this is where the connection, as you play around with lines for the next few exercises till you get to chapter 5, which is modeling helpers, it might be nice for us to think about this and say, what can we do with this? And one thing people might choose to do, let me exit that, is they might go in and say, okay, well, I really want to go in and make some lines, and I want a single line segment that goes from this point to here, and because this is the end of that curve, reset it, go from this point to the end of that polyline, go from this point to the end of that polyline, and go from this point to the end of that polyline. Now, if you think like this, you're thinking what I think is the very basic of CAD modeling, and that's fine because you're basic, hopefully, in looking at this video. And then I'm going to connect these lines again from here to this point. Now this would take time, and you may have the liberty of doing this in your own creative work, but you may not have the liberty of keeping people happy and moving at a fast pace. I'm a firm believer that the people that do the job fast should get paid as much as the people who do the job slow. They just have to stay longer in the workplace. So making this design is kind of what I want to make. And how can I do that? Well, one thing I can do right now is I'm going to select edit through the center of this, grab those middle lines, and I'm going to turn them to visibility off. You see I'm playing with this, and now I have my 2 lines as reference. Well, actually, I have these 5 lines as reference, 4 on the bottom and 1 on the top. And this is where it gets fun to type in Grasshopper. And I think learning Rhino, I'm going to try and relate these to doing something in Grasshopper each time. So, like I showed before, you would grab a container. Now, you could draw a line container, because your line container it's a tricky thing, and this is the reason I don't like it. When I go, I select multiple lines. It doesn't let me select. It says, no, you have to create them when you're selecting lines. And it's one of the bugs maybe I haven't gotten through it, but I'm going to select multiple lines, and I'm going to just copy this one to this one, this one to this one, same way I created it, this one to this one, this point to this point, and this point to this point. And that's going to allow me to, with my panel, show you that I have 4 lines selected. And not only that, I can take these lines and I can hide them as well. And they're there. They're there. They're just ghosted in what I call a grasshopper. Now the other one, which I like to use as a container, even though they're a polyline, they're straight, I like to use a curve container for it. The reason I do that is because you can right-click on it, set one curve, and grab that other curve very quickly. And once again, you can see exactly what I have from the panel tool, which is a reference 1 polyline curve. So you have this one and this one, and we can take that and hide it. So we have data. We have this data and this data. Now, how can we make logically and scripted what we just did? Well, if you're very wise, you can go into Math Tools and grab yourself a Python node, and you can grab yourself a C# node, and you can start to script exactly what you did by creating lines and writing that into the run script. Well, I don't want to go there yet because that's a couple of leaps and bounds for people starting Rhino, but we'll get there by the end of the semester. Where we're going to go now is we're going to take a line, and we're going to go to Curve Tools, and we're going to grab the lines at the beginning and end of this curve. And there they are, at the start and finish of all those lines. So it's grabbing the bottom section here and here. So if I select both, you can see what I've done. I've selected this, 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 and this, and gotten the front ends. And the other one, I'm going to cut and paste, bring it down here, and I didn't mean to cut my line. I'm going to input my curves, and you can see I get the top 2. So what you have is the start and finish of the top line, which is considered one line, and the top and finish of the bottom line. Maybe just for consistency's sake, let's get these out of the way so I don't confuse you. Let's grab all these and put those on the bottom, because those curves are on the bottom and those are on the top. So I'm just thinking like a canvas. And now we want to bring them together. Well, that's not too hard. You would basically create a line. Hopefully people are following along with this. That's a line tool for creating. And I want the start point of the line to be, just to be interesting, all these points. And I want the end point to be these points. And I've created exactly what I did in Rhino. And the same thing is I can cut and paste this. Whenever you're copying and cutting, you have to really question what you're doing. And there we go. I've got all these points going there and all these points going here. And the total of what I have, if I go back and select this and select edit this, you'll see exactly what I've made, the exact same thing. And this is fairly interesting to play around with and change. And the one thing I wanted to show you is because this is dependent on a curve, this imported curve, let's go back to that curve and let's just do something kind of fun. Let's take that top curve right here. Just this one. I'm going to put it on so I only select edit. And sometimes I like to right click here and go to preferences. And I'm a really blue person, so I really like blue. It seems to jump at me and tell me that I really like that. So as I select something, you'll see it goes blue. Line, the lines I created, the points at the ends, the points at the ends, lines I created in the original 4 lines. So taking this one, it might be nice to do an interpolated curve through points. So I'm going to right click and say, well, I should create those points to start. And I don't have my snap on my objects, which would be nice if I could do that. I think what I'll do is, because I'm not doing it, let's do curve, freeform line, and let's do it through interpolated points. And then I can grab here. And if I could get a snap on, that would be nice. Let's see, because as soon as you have grasshopper up, you start missing your other ones. I have my object snap on. I don't need this. I don't need this. I want to do my end snaps. And I think without planar on, smart track, don't really need that one. My O snap is on. I should be able to snap. Oh, the reason being, I need a line to snap to. So let's go back in here and let's snap to curve. Freeform line, interpolate points through this point, this point, this point, this point, and this point. Our snaps are really helping us out. Now I produced another curve, and the reason I did that is because that curve is dependent upon some points. So that curve's fairly interesting that it's being created by those points, but that's how you would do it in Rhino. Let's take those points and let's put some points on here. 1, and I should have right-clicked so I could do 2, 3, and do them in order. 4, 5. And then I can use my little Rhino technique of command line, which may be new to you. Select PT, which is selecting points, and we'll get into that. And I'm going to make a point container over on Grasshopper right here. And what I'm going to do, and this is just where it gets a little exciting for me, I'm going to set all those points in here. And instead of producing this curve, start and stop, I'm going to leave the container there. But to create points from that, those point systems, I'm going to go in here and do exactly what I just did in Rhino, which was interpolate points, go in the curves and say, here's interpolate points. Take the vertices to interpolate, you end up with a curve, put it in here. And in doing so, we have a very similar design. We can take off everything we were looking at, except, I think what I'll do is I'll select all of this and hide that. And I think I have a curve here I want to hide. And there's the interpolated points. But what's nice is those points will update. And even though I don't have these interpolated points, the ones that are connecting, if I move these 2 points, you'll see in Grasshopper, well, maybe it's best to show over here. If I move this point in Rhino and select that point, I should be able to grab it, and I move it, it just moves, and it doesn't update the Rhino model.